Hello, and welcome back to Killer Score, the podcast where we go on like a month-long hiatus. But we're back!
Hey.
Yeah, we were busy, had a lot of stuff, but this is Killer Score. We're the podcast that covers cult classic films with awesome soundtracks and composers and scores that we believe deserve more love and attention. And we're going to kick this episode off by starting with a couple of announcements. First off, which is, you guys finally got us to 100 subscribers on YouTube.
Hey!
Yay! And the numbers have been climbing, and we love and appreciate it. And we'll do a 100 subscriber special for you in the near future. We're just trying to think up an idea and come up with something.
Something cool enough or stupid enough to work for our sensibilities.
It's likely going to be on the stupid end of the spectrum.
Yeah, it needs to fit our brand.
I mean, 2 out of 3 of us, I know at least, would vote for the latter.
And another thing that I wanted to mention is this is the time of year we do our Killer Score fundraiser. This year's fundraiser is for the Animal Welfare Association in Voorhees, New Jersey. They are a no-kill nonprofit animal shelter. They're also a low-cost vet clinic, and basically they do everything they can to help animals in need. Dogs, cats, little furry friends, and all that. We have a GoFundMe page, link in the description.
And link in the description of the soon-to-be-released video promo done by an anonymous but devilishly handsome voice actor who had contributed to it.
Alright then.
Yeah, cool.
So, before we begin, I'd like to actually thank everyone listening who just so happened to have been a guest at Monster Mania, who had stopped by our table for Killer Score and Witching Crafts.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who showed up. Thank you for everyone who purchased things or took business cards. We love you and appreciate you.
Yep, and Erin has commissions open again, so if you want a commissioner to make something, just hit her up.
She's awesome, and her stuff is awesome. But if y'all don't mind me taking over the spotlight once again.
About of course.
It's your episode.
Indeed it is, and this episode comes courtesy of 2 things. One, Nicolas Winding-Refn, a renowned Danish director who has made his rounds in Hollywood recently and has become something of a critical darling. And 2, mine and Dalton's love for possibly his most famous movie in the last decade or so, the 2011 action neo-noir film Drive.
It's a classic.
Indeed it is, and one that has quite the history behind its production, both pre- and mid-production wise.
No famous post-production history? As everyone knows, post-production is when the real crazy stuff happens.
Yeah, it's just like 12 guys in an editing room.
Just being like, which cut sequence do we want to use? What are we cutting out?
Cutting room floor.
Anyway, this film in particular is one of several in our lineup that has had many rewrites over the years leading up to its eventual release.
Yeah. Well, honestly, my joke I just realized about post-production isn't too inaccurate. I mean, if an American movie showed us anything, post-production can get crazy sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, just remember the part in American movie. It's not something we covered on the podcast. It's something we watched in our own time.
Yeah.
Where they're frantically looking for like 3 frames of film.
Yeah.
Check it out. It's really fascinating and says a lot about independent film production.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But this movie has a lot of history behind it, and it was something of a passion project for its director, Nicolas Winding-Refn. He had gone on record as saying that Drive was the product of his love for numerous things. One, weirdly enough, being fairy tales, as he said he wanted to make a modern-day fairy tale set in the city of L.A., yes.
City Angels.
City of Angels.
Yeah.
And two, it was born from his love of films the likes of which were often produced by Michael Mann.
Yeah.
The fingerprints of the James Caan-helmed Thief, in particular, is all over this movie. Same sort of lighting, same sort of music,
Yeah.
same sort of moody neo-noir tones.
You know, and I was going to say, L.A. is a very appropriate city for noir, especially Sunshine Noir, because it's like the city of like Sunshine Noir and West Coast Noir in general. I mean, think of how many like film noir stuff is just set in L.A. I mean, you got the famous film noir video game, L.A. Noire.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You got L.A. Noir, L.A. Confidential, which, great movie.
Chinatown, I believe, too.
Ah, yes.
The many things, the many movies, TV shows, and everything that's just called City of Angels or has City of Angels as a subtext that's a noir series.
Hell, even the musical City of Angels is about a writer making a film noir piece based on his own book.
Yeah.
Because the first one that comes to my mind is something that no one watched.
Sunset Boulevard, too.
Sunset Boulevard,
yes.
too. But that is something that a lot of people watch, is they did a sequel to Penny Dreadful called City of Angels, and no one watched it on Showtime.
As I had previously alluded to, however, his main inspiration was, in fact, Grimm's fairy tales. And that inspiration is right down to the decision to not give the protagonist a direct name. The Ryan Gosling protagonist is simply referred to as the driver.
Yep.
Which, interestingly enough, is the name of a 1978 film that has a lot of tonal inspirations for this movie.
Yeah. And it's just also very fairy tale in general, because, like, think of all the fairy tales where, like, a bunch of the characters actually don't have names.
Yeah.
Of course, just the princess, or Little Red Riding Hood.
Little Red Riding Hood, the grandma, the huntsman.
The wolf.
Yeah.
It's not even the big bad wolf, it's just the wolf.
It's like, well, what would you name the wolf? Just like Jerry or something?
Yeah, right. Hey, I'm Bert.
The
I'm
big
Bert
Bert
the
wolf.
The big Bert
Bert
wolf.
Wolf.
New
But
t-shirt.
do not let the
Big Bert wolf.
Big Bert wolf.
You just got a wolf in, like, a business, just like a casual, like,
No, he's
office
just-
shirt and a tie.
He's just like Bert from Sesame Street.
Yeah, just Bert in a wolf costume.
No, the big Bert wolf, he's dressed like an accountant with the little glasses. The little glasses on a big wolf.
Aviator glasses.
Yeah, just a little. Let's talk about your 401k.
It's a bit late to set up your IRA fund.
Killer score. Not even a month's hiatus will stop us from rambling.
Not the Irish Republican Army.
No, it's a retirement fund thing that we have in the U.S. It's kind of confusing. They say to set it up at a certain point in your life, and I don't know when that point is.
Do not confuse it with the Irish Republican Army.
2011's Drive.
Also not affiliated with the Irish Republican Army. To my knowledge.
To my knowledge. Let's
This-
not. Okay, I'm sorry.
Despite this film's comparisons to and inspirations by fairy tales, this is one of those films, Drive is one of those films that is very much one that I consider so simple that it borders on modern classic perfection. And all of this is owed considerably to many factors, One is the aforementioned sunshine noir aesthetic, courtesy of its director. Its music by former Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer Cliff-Martinez, who is more and more becoming famous for his film work in movies like Spring Breakers, The Foreigner, and The Neon Demon, another Nicolas Winding-Refn film. And most of all, for my part, the biggest factor of appeal is most definitely the acting.
Oh yeah. That, and I would say, despite being inspired by a fairy tale, the shocking amount of realism in this film.
Oh yes, it's very, very grounded, and there are elements of this movie's narrative that were directly inspired by the actors putting in elements that they thought would be more realistic. And there's something that Bryan Cranston contributed to this movie that I will detail once we finish screening.
Yeah.
But the acting is great across the board. I mean, you just heard me mention Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
But Ryan Gosling basically cemented himself as an excellent, versatile actor in this film.
Yeah, this was the film that, like, kind of got him out of, like...
being the heartthrob character in, like, romance movies. Because everyone knows Ryan Gosling for The Notebook, but he's done so much other work.
Yeah, and even after The Notebook, he was mostly getting in romantic films or romantic comedies.
There are elements of that sort of character in The Driver, but there's also a great deal of subversion going on, and a lot of this is owed to Ryan Gosling's actions over words performance.
Yeah, and even the romance feels kind of like the romance in Heat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of Michael Mann comparisons
with
today.
De Niro's character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Strap yourselves in, because the Michael Mann parallels are going to be everywhere in this movie. And as for the acting, Albert Brooks is in top form here, and I'm not going to say anything else until we screen it, because, Erin, I am so excited to see your reactions to his performance in this in particular.
You know, if there's one, I did a little bit of looking into this just by reading. You can watch this movie on Amazon Prime. It's available for rent, or if you want to buy it on Prime. But for me, at least, I was interested in this movie besides Ryan Gosling. And I don't mean because he's hot, but I mean because he's actually an excellent actor as well. But also, I'm excited to see Carey Mulligan's performance in this.
Oh yeah, Carey Mulligan's good.
Because I love Carey Mulligan. Because I first saw her in Doctor Who, which is one of her earlier roles. She's great in An Education. There's some other films I can't think of. More recently, she did Promising Young Woman, which, rough film to get through from what I've heard. It's on my list.
Hello, potential episode. Holy shit, is that rough.
Yeah, so...
Great, but rough.
You got a summary for this one before we get into the screening?
Yes, I do. Drive is, as I've alluded to before, a neo-noir piece about the title character, the driver, a getaway driver, shockingly, for a mob outfit centered in LA who gets entangled in all sorts of criminal schemes, and in his specific case, a romantic affair that borders on the love triangle.
All right.
So, there's a lot more to get into after the screening, but this preamble has gone on for quite a while, and I am excited to both screen this and discuss the many rewrites that I mentioned in this introduction.
All right, let's get into it. Hey, and we're back. We just got back from watching Drive.
Indeed we have. We have just gotten through this movie. I'm not sure how many times this has been for Daulton, but this will be my third time seeing this movie. And as with the first and second times I saw this in my mom's living room, I have been reminded of why I was so in love with it the first time. Drive is an atmospheric masterpiece of lighting, composition, shot composition, and music composition, and of acting, and of just pure unbridled mood.
Yeah.
It is a mood.
Drive is very much Mood the movie, and while there is a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff and film story details that I'd like to get into, I don't want to hog this whole thing forever, so let's take it from left to right here.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, this is like my second or third time seeing it. Yup, still awesome. I kind of love the structure of it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because, you think it's going to start off one way, and, by the way, watch this film and then go look up the trailer for this film, because it is one of the worst, most misleading trailers of all time.
It's awful.
It is so bad. In fact, it is so bad, a woman tried to sue the film studio for the trailer because she thought she was going to be watching like a Fast and the Furious style movie.
So she sued them for false advertising?
Yes.
Oh my god.
And that is actually interesting considering the rewrites that I mentioned, but that's neither here nor there. We'll get back to that in a second. I do believe that there is an impression we have yet to discern, however.
So, the mood that I can describe this movie with is atmospheric but intense.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the best way I can put it. The soundtrack itself is very ethereal. The movie itself is very atmospheric in its lighting and shot composition. The storytelling and acting is very intense.
That juxtaposition is what makes it so great, though.
Oh, of course. I really like this movie. I thought all the acting in it was fantastic. As we mentioned, soundtracks, shot composition, cinematography, all beautiful to look at and beautiful to listen to. And I love the way that they shoot LA at night.
Ah, yes.
Just the way that it looks very... like, it manages to look both pretty and gritty at the same time. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Nice rhyme there, too.
Yeah.
And I think that the aforementioned prettiness and grittiness of this movie is once again owed to its inspirations, namely the films of Michael Mann and his many, many successors. This movie is frankly amazing considering how many reincarnations it's gone through as far as rewrites goes, because fun fact about the original incarnation of Drive, this was originally supposed to be a Fast and the Furious style movie, like the trailers awfully suggested it should be, and Hugh Jackman was supposed to have helmed the cast of this.
Oh, no. I like Hugh, but no. No,
Like,
no.
I don't see him in this movie.
No.
He doesn't have...
I don't see him in either kind of movie, to be honest.
I mean, the Fast and Furious one kind of makes more sense.
I can't. I just...
Very
I can't.
vaguely.
Like, vaguely.
Hugh Jackman has and always will look like a trucker. And the fact he has not played a trucker outside of that one scene in the first X-Men movie.
Okay, you bring that up, and now I can't help but imagine, like, a neo-noirish take on Smokey and the Bandit.
When are we getting our Smokey and the Bandit remake with Hugh Jackman in it? You can have him sing a cover of Convoy for the soundtrack.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
you know what I'm imagining now?
But
A remake of Big Trouble in Little China starring Hugh Jackman.
honestly, he could do it. He could.
He could.
He could. Do it.
He'd have like a.
He'd be a good Jack Burton.
He has the same kind of Kurt Russell energy.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
But back to this movie. There were so many different angles from which this movie was approached.
Oh, Hugh, baby, hit us up. Huey, darling.
For instance, Nicolas Winding-Refn had basically broken his spirits trying to get casting together for this, to the point where by the time he first met with Ryan Gosling, he was at his lowest point, and they were driving to some sort of on-set meeting, and he was bursting into tears at the sound of a pop song playing.
I saw that. It was specifically REO Speedwagon.
Yeah. And Ryan Gosling...
That's how frazzled he was.
Oh, he was... production, at least, like, on the concept level, was a nightmare for him.
Because let's face it, if you're crying to REO Speedwagon, you were at your lowest point.
It's like crying to Toto.
Yeah.
For who isn't moved to tears?
Or Styx.
By...
I'm sailing. Oh, God.
God damn it, Daulton. I had a thought.
And it's gone now.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. I have my thought. Fuck you. So, this
Hit
first...
the backboard, but then it bounced into the net.
This first meeting was actually Ryan Gosling's first true impression of him, and it almost got him to back out of Drive.
Yeah, I heard actually seeing him break down is what made him actually, like, sign on.
Yes. Seeing him recover specifically was the impetus for Ryan Gosling agreeing to this.
Because
and
the song Coming On is what made it, like, click.
Clicked
Because he even said, he's like, it's about a guy who drives around at night in L.A. and listens to pop songs. Which
Apropos.
isn't wrong.
It's not wrong. It's not the best descriptor, but it's not wrong.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful that he made that decision, because Ryan Gosling is one of the...
Kills it.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
he does. He, as the ramping introduction has might have clued you into, Ryan Gosling plays a simple character, but not really.
No.
No.
Like, you'd think that a nameless driver wouldn't have depth to him, but you would be dead wrong.
This is the dream role and nightmare role of a lifetime, because you don't have to say a lot,
but you have to do a lot.
but you have to do a lot, and everything, you're what makes or breaks the film.
Every word you say has to carry the weight of a soliloquy behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and Gosling was perfectly cast in this.
And I was about to say, not even that, because a lot of his acting comes down to facial movements, facial acting, and just body language, which is something that, if you're not an experienced actor, is very difficult to portray.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here with two theater nerds, so here we go.
Yeah, there's no playing to the back rows in this film.
No, there isn't.
This is a film about emotional intensity and intimacy. You're not allowed to see him play to the back rows, because you are, for the most part, always
it's not that
with
kind
him.
of film.
It's not that kind of film, and you are always with the driver. You are the front row witness to his anger and his determination and his concerns for other people.
And introspection.
Yeah.
Especially in those aforementioned highway scenes where there's not but his face, the fading lights of passing street lamps and the droning of the synth music to accompany him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you get the sense that he's the kind of guy who, like, would just be happy just working on cars and driving around, but he doesn't have that kind of life. You get the very sad sense that he's someone who will just kind of go along with anything and will do what people tell him to.
Yeah. And what I was going to say is that this movie is both subtle and over the top at the same time.
Oh, yes.
It relies on both. Because there's the subtlety of just small movements in Ryan Gosling's acting, and Carey Mulligan's too. Basically everyone's acting. Like, the way they can turn their head or, like, look in a direction can completely change a scene.
Or switch their expression. But also there's scenes, like, where they're driving and it goes all crazy, or, like, scenes where someone's getting mugged or something like that. Where it just goes crazy over the top, and it's like smashing melons.
Yeah,
we'll explain that later.
This movie's all about the interplay between serenity and violence.
Yeah.
It's a beautifully violent film.
It's a beautiful dichotomy.
Yeah.
I think what makes that dichotomy work so well in this film's particular case, however, is just how smoothly it transitions.
Mm-hmm.
Which is saying something, because those aren't slow transitions some of the time.
No,
Like,
they're not.
No.
but their precision and the implementation of action amidst the serenity is just beautiful.
This movie is a sledgehammer with a velvet sheen.
It's fucking poetry there, man. that was perfect. We are going to be talking about the lighting so much in this movie because it is the heavy lifter.
Yeah, this movie really knows how to interplay beauty and violence, especially like the beach scene. That feels like something out of a giallo flick.
It does.
Yeah.
And
especially with the music they use for that.
yeah, and what I was going to say is that the idea in this movie of beauty and violence, they're not mutually exclusive.
No.
Because there's beautifully shot scenes that are just horrific to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's scenes where it's
The elevator, the
like
beach,
the elevator, the beach, the robbery,
motel,
the
restaurant.
the restaurant.
Yeah.
Like there's so many scenes in this movie that show both it interplaying and as I mentioned, dichotomy of beauty and violence. And one thing that I wanted to mention, Daulton mentioned giallo films, and in the lighting you can see different interplays of different mood lights and different colors that they use. Like there was a slight I'm not gonna say like homage, but inspiration is the better word, from filmmakers like Argento.
Oh, yeah.
In the way that they use like purple lighting or blue lighting or orange or like different colors in the movie, but it's used very subtly instead of being like bright ass colors like in Suspiria, for example.
Yeah, and there's also inspiration from all sorts of film genres. Specifically, there's shots that are references to The Searchers and Shane.
Those are the specific shots will be covered under spoilers later, but something I also wanted to bring up in the same vein of that is the shot composition, which
is genius.
Yeah.
just plain art. Just art in motion.
It's artistic genius.
Yeah.
Artistic genius. I'm sorry, this movie kind of takes my eloquence out of me. Every frame looks like it could be a painting or a photograph, and it's all complemented by the balance of light and darkness depending on what time of day it is and what the context for the scene is. And once again, I was reminded so much of Thief because of that framework.
I just thought about something that like shouldn't bug me but does though with the film.
I
and
would say Daulton has a look.
Which is specifically the scene in the restaurant early on in the film where like the pizza place, and for some reason he's eating Chinese food.
Well, they actually even mentioned that, like, what are you doing eating
Chinese food.
Chinese food? They use a racial slur in the movie,
Yeah.
so let's not go
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
that.
No.
What are you doing eating Chinese food in a pizza place? And they even say, like, what's a Jew doing going to a pizza place?
Well, where did the Chinese food come from? Did he bring Chinese food with him to this restaurant
he
meeting?
did.
Probably.
He did.
Or
Because-
does this pizza restaurant also serve Chinese food,
Which
No,
is
no, no.
interesting, 'cause
which
they
is
asked
the
for
alternative?
chopsticks.
Yeah, because he asks for chopsticks,
and fork
which
and cookies.
implies that the pizza restaurant did in fact supply those things, which means that this pizza restaurant also serves Chinese food.
I mean, there's a pizza place near us that also does tacos, so...
Yeah, Mexican and
Could be
Italian.
one of
but
those-
yeah,
Could be a fusion restaurant. Especially considering this is LA and the Chinatown district is as huge
Yeah.
as it is.
And
oh,
it's not as big as San Francisco's, but it's pretty big.
It's pretty big.
definitely bigger than Philly's.
Definitely big. Philly's is not that big, to be honest.
No, it's a few blocks.
Yeah.
It's like 6 blocks.
I feel so out of place whenever I see anything filmed in other Chinatown districts. It's just like, I've only had a slice of a giant pie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, back to the movie. instead of
Back to
talking
the
about Chinese
movie.
food.
there's not as much garbage in the streets.
Welcome to Philly.
Yeah,
It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
yeah,
For me anyway.
Yeah.
But acting's also phenomenal, as Erin alluded to. Ryan Gosling obviously knocks it out of the park, flawless. Everyone else is great too, though. I think the highlight performance for me has to be Albert Brooks as Bernie,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
because he is known very much for his comedic characters and for that sort of shipper energy that he brings to that. And he does bring a little bit of that energy to the mobster Bernie.
Just the tiniest, just the
Just the
tiniest.
tiniest
bit
bit.
of humor to a mob.
But
We're not talking ghost dog mobsters here.
we're not.
We're
This-
and we're definitely not talking like Sopranos here.
No.
No.
This guy is a character who has the thinnest of masks that is laid over rage and impatience and indignation.
Yeah, I think it's very telling when he first meets the driver and the driver just stares him down and doesn't shake his hand.
One of the best lines ever, too, when Ryan Gosling says, "My hands are dirty." And he goes, "So are mine."
Yeah, yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
He has a lot of great lines, honestly. We'll elaborate under spoilers later, but I feel like this movie's dialogue goes underappreciated. Like, its use of silence is easily the highlight of the atmosphere, but when it has to use words, and it does have its characters converse, it is very tight and very well written.
It's also very realistic in
Oh,
the
yeah.
way that the characters are written and the way that the dialogue is written, because you're not going to hear like Whedon speak, but you're also not going to hear people like waxing poetic.
Yeah.
Like, it feels very realistic in the way that people are talking.
Oh yeah.
Just artsy enough.
Just artsy enough, but not so much that you're going to hear someone monologue like Shakespeare.
The dirty hands bit is probably as artsy as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, as metaphorical as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I just want to say I think it's very telling that the fact that the driver gets along with Benicio the most is very telling.
Yeah.
Because
That's along with this like 7-year-old kid
yeah, who also doesn't speak a lot.
who doesn't speak a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty soft-spoken, pretty low-key, which I always
He's a shy kid.
Yeah.
I always appreciate that for kid characters because, let's face it, most Hollywood writers do not know how to make high-energy kids work.
And it's also very telling that the most dialogue both of them have is when they talk to each other on the couch in the one scene.
Yeah.
They're just talking about sharks.
Yeah.
Makes you
Which is
feel...
something that little boys like. They
Yeah.
like sharks.
And it's I'm pretty sure it's implying they're watching Shark Tale.
Or Finding Nemo.
One of those two.
Yeah, because he was like, he's a bad guy. How can you tell? He's a shark.
I'm pretty convinced that it's Finding Nemo
Yeah.
because of that first shot of Bruce, which would also double as a bit of
Foreshadowing, yeah.
foreshadowing and a bit of actor parallels, considering Albert Brooks is in this movie.
I
yeah,
didn't even
good
think of
point,
that.
good point, yeah.
Like, because remember, at one point things get really intense, and I leaned into Erin, and I said, that actor was Marlon.
Oh yeah. Another thing I was gonna mention is I was wrong when we were watching this movie.
You were.
I was very wrong because
Yeah,
once they
we're
introduced
so
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh my god.
So wrong.
So
that would go into spoilers, so we won't go into it.
we won't go
right
into
yet,
it, but I do have to talk about
so wrong.
the stuff leading up to it. Plot happens, and Erin makes some sort of guess, and Daulton just goes, okay. And I go, okay.
Yeah.
And while she's leaning forward in the couch while we're watching, I just sort of leaned back
Yeah.
to Daulton, and I
We
winked
were
at
both just like,
We were just winking to each other like, she's so fucking wrong.
She's so misled. And this score
I
is
felt like Bugs Bunny.
the score is so good for this movie because like it works so well, but it's so not what you would expect for a film like this.
No, it isn't what you would expect. It's more like a lot of the music on here, as you mentioned, was from the label Italians Do It Better.
Yeah,
which
you've
is
got
like,
Desire, Chromatics, yeah.
Which, if you're not familiar with that label, it's a recording label from. Are they from Italy? No.
No.
Okay. I didn't think so.
It's just a reference to the
Italo disco.
to the Italo disco scene, which is a huge influence on the label.
Yeah. Think of the best example I can think of that is similar to a genre, like a label being focused on one major genre that like basically a lot of the bands on the label is like Fueled by Ramen doing pop punk.
And think like the if you're trying to wonder what the music sounds like, think of the compositions by like Giorgio Moroder.
Yeah, Giorgio Moroder.
Yeah.
Or if you haven't listened to Chromatics, go listen to Chromatics.
Oh, they're great.
They're great. Rest in peace, Chromatics. They did break up last year.
Yeah. So many terrible breakups recently.
Yeah, it was a mutual thing. They never went into too much detail. It's heavily implied to be because of Johnny Jewel, because that guy's very controlling over the labels in the band,
Yeah.
and he's also kind of crazy.
Yeah, like he had a near-death experience and then like scrapped an album or rewrote it, right?
He destroyed the masters.
Oh God.
Yeah.
He completely destroyed an album that was literally finished and
Just-
going to be released, and it never released.
Because he destroyed the master tapes.
They were going to re-record and redo the album, and it was it was literally the most anticipated album from Chromatics, because two of their most popular singles were labeled on the music videos and on streaming as going to be from the upcoming album Dear Tommy. The most famous Chromatic song, Shadow, that was supposed to be a Dear Tommy song.
Mm-hmm.
And the album never came out.
A lot of parallels you can draw between that album and this movie. Now that you think about it, this movie almost died.
Or the Smile album.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's Walk Hard all over again. Complete with chaos and my inability to convey info about the movie.
No didgeridoos, though.
No armies of didgeridoos.
No.
Oh my god.
No army of
Dalton.
didgeridoos or a goat. There were no goats in this film.
Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
I mean, there might have been. There might have been a petting. There's a petting zoo in L.A. I'm sure.
There
All
must
right.
be several. I mean, people have kids. so-
2011's Drive. 2011's Drive.
Does not have petting zoos in it,
Fuck off, Dalton.
unless there is a deleted scene. I don't know. Because there was quite a lot of stuff cut out.
Shut up. Damn it.
There's no goats, but there is a goat. And that goat, greatest of all time, was Ryan Gosling.
Hey.
So,
Cue the George. Insert the George Lucas behind the scenes episode 1 documentary footage. It's like poetry. It rhymes.
We named the driver Indiana. So
Ryan Gosling is the key to this. He's the funniest character we've ever had.
okay, there's a lot we have to talk about theme-wise and
Not George Lucas's
story-wise. So, on that note,
Did you know George Lucas is in The Secret of Monkey Island?
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is.
He plays a bridge troll.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty funny.
It is.
On that note,
Because you can even see the zipper on the
on
costume.
that note, at the 40 mark is when we shall dive into spoilers for this movie, because the production and the story are intertwined in ways that are unavoidable when it comes to spoiling this movie.
Oh, and also, this is when I'll give the spoiler for Secret of Monkey Island. To get past him, give him a red herring.
Yeah.
Literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
So
He eats it.
one thing I love about this movie
Is washing machines.
This episode of Killer Score was brought to you by laundry machines.
Laundry machines.
By washing machines.
Is this also brought to you by?
We are not sponsored. I would like to say very clearly that we are not sponsored by a very specific company. That is not a thing. Thank you.
I'll edit it. So, thank you, Erin.
You're welcome.
So one thing I really appreciate about this movie is how there's a bit of metatextual elements to its narrative and its writing, because the movie is about the driver's fluctuation between getaway driving jobs and stunt driving.
Yeah.
Because he does stunt driving for action scenes in Hollywood movies. And the funny thing about that is that Ryan Gosling actually took a course on stunt driving for a lot of the scenes. There were stunt drivers in Ryan Gosling's place in a select few shots, but for the most part, it's safe to say that about 50 to 60% of the stunt shots were Ryan Gosling in the driver's seat. And I kind of like the mild parallel between actor and character there.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to a thematic element that I really appreciate about this movie is the defiance of roles and of expected narrative outcomes.
Yeah.
We talked a bit about how Albert Brooks is playing against type in this movie, but
I kept waiting for the Weeping Angels to show up. They got Sally Sparrow in this.
Yeah, Carey Mulligan plays Sally Sparrow in the introduction episode of The Weeping Angels and Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
this is like 6 degrees of
We will find
Doctor
a way.
Who.
We will find a way. Look, Doctor Who is like, if I'm going to compare myself to another YouTube channel real quick, with me, Doctor Who is like Star Trek for Mike Stolotska and Red Letter Media. I will find a way to tie something back to Doctor Who.
What else I was going to say is...
Everyone's been in Doctor Who?
Everyone's been in Doctor Who besides that. There was a clip from Martin Freeman about probably 8 or 10 years ago saying it was like, I'm one of the few British actors who has not been in Harry Potter or Doctor Who.
Yeah. Change that. Get Martin Freeman a Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But getting into spoilers again, we talked a bit about how people play against type all over this movie, and I think that is especially prevalent among the villains, or at least the antagonistic half of the cast.
Among Us? Oh no.
Shut up. He is in rare form today, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Gremlin Brain Prime. But I think that is.
Pick him up and hold him to the mic.
Yeah.
I think
Hear him scream.
this is how it happened. This is how Richard Eckert lost his mind. But the defiance of character archetypes, I feel, is most especially prevalent in Ron Perlman's character, Nino.
Yeah.
He is himself someone who presents himself as working for a somewhat Italian mob and works at a pizzeria, but he is in fact a Jewish mobster who, in fact, has a lot of resentment for his associates because of their anti-Semitism.
Yet he still tries to act like them, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because how often do you see Ron fucking Perlman
Play the stooge.
play the brute, play the dude who's not a chess master? I mean, this is Slade, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he isn't dignified
No.
like Bernie or any of his other associates. He's very reckless. Half of the conflicts he has with the driver happens because he's arrogant and reckless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as we alluded to earlier, Erin was so dead wrong about a lot of the events of the plot because the movie sets it up like it's going to happen but never delivers.
Yeah, it subverts your expectations because when I first saw Carey Mulligan's character, I was like, oh, this is going to be a woman in refrigerators kind of thing. She's going to die to move the plot forward.
When in fact...
When in fact, she lives to see the end of the movie.
Because the driver knows what kind of movie he's in.
Yeah. Because the driver basically does everything to protect her and to protect Irene and Benicio.
Yeah.
Sorry, Benicio.
And he would have... And the funny thing is, like... I think what a lot of people don't realize with this film, too, is Oscar Isaac's character of Standard is kind of the linchpin, where if he hadn't have come out of prison at that exact moment, none of this would have happened. Yeah.
Props to him in that role, by the way, because he owns every second of those 20 minutes that he has. From his initial resentment of the driver coming into his family's life, to him coming to begrudgingly trust him, to him genuinely wanting a better life that is just out of his grasp, is just amazing. Like, he does so well in that brief time.
Yeah, because to be honest, I felt bad for the guy.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like he just wanted to get out of prison and turn a new leaf and start his life over, but his past just followed him from getting out to his life outside of prison, and it followed his family as well.
And I think what I like best about Standard's death is that it does sneak up on you. You kind of see it coming, but not at the exact moment that it happens.
Yeah.
Not even halfway through the film passes by before he is ambushed and shot in the chest and head.
I also kind of love how later when the driver just goes on his rampage, and it's not as flashy and cool as rampages.
This isn't
movies.
John Wick.
No, this is just sheer brutality.
Yeah.
Dude bashes some fucking heads in, literally.
Yeah, bashes heads in, makes the guy choke on a bullet.
Yeah, because it's not... In a lot of movies, when you see a guy go on a revenge rampage, it's supposed to be like, oh, look at this guy, he's so cool. This is not one of those movies.
This is like the anti-death wish.
Yeah,
this is the anti-death wish.
Scared of him.
Scared and kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because this is someone who's going on a rampage because he's afraid of losing everything he has.
And he's doing it even knowing it's going to cause him to lose things.
Everything.
But he just wants to protect someone.
Yeah. The best way I can describe it is, one of the movies that shows up. That if you look this up on Amazon Prime, which is where we watched it, you have to rent the movie or buy it, which sucks. But anyway, there's a movie. VPNs are your friend.
Yes.
I wish we were sponsored by one, but we don't have sponsorships yet. Anyway. Yet. But anyway, one of the movies that shows up in the suggested films below Drive is Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
And that's a parallel that I wanted to make here, because Robert De Niro's character in Taxi Driver is very similar to the driver in Drive.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna talk to you guys like this from now on, because I missed that movie. Richard, Taxi Driver is one of my favorite movies ever. Eckert forgot to mention fucking Taxi Driver. Fuck.
But
the driver is much more noble.
The driver is much more noble, and he has much more of, in my opinion, a better cause
and skill
than Travis Bickle. Travis, thank you. Because when you look at Travis as a character, he's like insane.
I have a feeling you were about to say Travis Scott, because I could see an S start to form.
I almost said Travis Touchdown. Wrong thing altogether.
You know what the funny thing is?
Both of those are about violence, heavily about violence, and star a character with a cool jacket.
Suda 51 even said that Travis Bickle was who he named Travis Touchdown after.
No, he didn't.
Did he?
No.
Who did he name him after?
You were completely wrong.
Wow, I had the wrong ass source.
He named it after the protagonist of his favorite film, Paris, Texas.
Yeah, he did. Bad Rich. Bad Richie.
But anyway, back to Taxi Driver.
And Drive.
And Drive. The parallel that I was going to make is that in Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle has this idea that he wants to protect the women around him.
Yeah.
And even though he's throughout the film, he loses touch with reality and just goes completely batshit.
Yeah.
But with
both
the driver,
end in a similar way too.
They do. But in Drive, the driver, his motivation is more over protecting the people around him over himself.
Yeah.
Because he wants to protect Benicio, he wants to protect Irene.
To the point that he completely cuts them out of his life.
To the point where he cuts them out of his life.
Drives off into the sunset, literally.
Yeah. So so they can have a better life without him.
Yeah.
I just want to take a moment aside. Hey Dalton, do I have permission to cut out my Travis Touchdown flub?
It's too funny.
I want to cut that though.
It's too funny though. It's going to be too jarring.
Fine.
If you cut it, there's going to be a very sudden, obvious cut. Rich.
At least if I'm gonna fuck up research, it's not for this movie. At least I got that straight.
Yeah.
But it's all beautifully executed.
Oh, yeah.
One would be mistaken for thinking the driver is a one-note blank slate character if they hadn't seen this movie and seen his bittersweet journey carried out to poetic perfection.
Yeah, and as the song itself sings in the movie, you could argue that he's a real human being and a real hero.
Which is something I think speaks to the strength of this movie. The balance between
hero and anti-hero.
Yeah.
Hero and anti-hero, but also art and reality.
Yeah.
Things are glamorously shot, but not glamorous in tone in this movie.
No, I mean, the car chases aren't long and prolonged. They're very sudden and violent because that's how most car chases go in real life.
As are the hand-to-hand scuffles, like in the elevator scene.
Everything is incredibly one-sided.
Yep, nobody is evenly matched, even in the final moments.
And even if they were, they do the smart thing and they just do quick and dirty stuff.
And funny enough, something I mentioned to the two of them is that the actors themselves actually threw in methods of making things more punchy and more realistic, such as when Shannon, Bryan Cranston's character, the mentor of the driver, is killed by Bernie for refusing to play ball, and he is cut down the length of the wrist and the arm. That was Bryan Cranston's idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is a very quick, efficient way to kill someone.
And again, the acting in that scene is so great because Bryan Cranston looks like he's in visible pain, and
He just looks. He doesn't look physically hurt. He looks
emotionally like he can see everything going down the tubes for him. And Albert Brooks has the best delivery ever, where he's not angry like he was in the other scenes. He's just comforting him.
He's just disappointed.
He's just like, don't worry. There's no pain. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, he just clearly, like, he had problems with Shannon, but he just clearly felt bad for donuts of the guy.
Just, this movie's so great at nuance like that. Like, nobody...
He knew Shannon had a mouth because he was always talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love how nobody is who the movie says they are. Like, nobody is just their archetype in this.
Yeah, because he's the one who slipped up and mentioned Irene.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't of, the driver probably would have just, like, washed his hands of everything.
And I was going to say about the fairy tale aspect of it that we mentioned earlier, and the
fairy tale aspect.
The Grimm's fairy tale aspect. The juxtaposition, thank you, of fantasy and violence. Not only that, but also how we mentioned at the end of the movie, the scorpion and the frog being used, even though it's an Aesop fable and not technically a fairy tale. The question is, who's the scorpion and who's the frog in this movie?
Yeah.
Because you see them both acting, and you see the characters acting in both ways, where they could be the scorpion, where they could sting the person who's giving them the ride.
Yeah.
Or they could be the frog who drowns the scorpion.
Yeah.
It can go either way. It is their nature.
Mm-hmm.
Hence that final shot in the film of Bernie and the driver exchanging knife wounds.
Scorpion and the frog, farmer and the viper.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, that scorpion coat plays directly into that thematic beat.
Yeah.
And when we mentioned the fairy tale aspect earlier, when we were doing the intro of this, one of the things that we talked about is how in fairy tales, if you look at like Grimm's fairy tales or Hans Christian Andersen, there's not always a happy ending.
Not only that, but characters very rarely have names in those fairy tales.
They very rarely have actual names. It's not like someone's name is like George or Ben or Mary.
Hence the driver.
It's usually
the
just
driver.
it's usually just titles.
Yeah. But what I was also going to say is that the characters' endings, the ones who survive to the end, are bittersweet in a way. Because Irene's ending is essentially she gets to live with Benicio. She gets to live.
Yeah.
Yes. But that is her reward.
But that is her reward.
That is her only reward.
She lost both of the men she loved.
Yeah. And you see the driver who just drives away because he has to, and he's lost everything.
And I think there's a bit of a parallel I just sensed in here. Much like the supporting cast of Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai, not everybody gets everything they want in this.
No.
And like, what's disheartening about everything too is the fact that it's one of those brilliantly written movies where just like all these little connections just click together, and if like just one of them was removed, things would have been completely differently.
Yeah, because it took me a little bit to think about throughout the movie, because at first I was paying attention throughout the movie, but there were little bits that I missed here and there.
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, my phone went off, or I got distracted by something when we were talking.
Or my dad was yelling at the Eagles game in the background.
That too.
That too. Anyway, the other thing I was going to mention that has now lost my train of thought, I will get back to you later.
You were talking about the fairy tale elements.
Oh, the fairy tale.
You lost track of things.
Oh yeah, how I lost track of things a couple times. It's okay to pause a movie to think about what just happened, if you have to.
Yes.
That's just something I want to put out there. If you, like, the first time I watched Trainspotting, although it's my favorite movie, the accents are so thick that it's okay to use subtitles. If a movie has a lot going on, it's okay to pause and think about it and then hit play.
Yeah. Oh, and here's another thing I want to bring up because of the usual Daulton rant of the infantilization of the film industry and the just blockbusterification of current film culture.
We were so close to the end.
Just because a movie makes you think
doesn't mean it's bad.
Doesn't mean it's bad. Just because everything is not clearly laid out for you, like a child needs to have things laid out for them, doesn't mean it's a bad film.
Oh, he's doing it. He's doing the Chevy Chase tremble again.
Like, if your character isn't black and white, it doesn't mean they're a bad character. And if a movie isn't filled with quips, it doesn't mean that it's poorly written or dark or edgy.
Happy place, Daulton.
This is just a rock solid film, and that's all I'm gonna say about it this time.
The best way I can describe it is when you're reading Shakespeare the first time.
Yeah.
You have to stop every couple pages or every part or every little bits so you can figure out what they just said.
Yeah, and just because a movie is...
And then continue.
Just because a movie is quiet or isn't, like, big and bombastic or some big budget Hollywood action film, it doesn't mean it's an art house flick.
No.
Still.
Movies need atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Dark, beautiful, and haunting in this case.
Yeah.
What a better winter movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, out of spoilers for Drive.
1 hour 47.
Yes.
Yeah. Usual time for us.
Usual time. This movie's great. We were brief on some of the non-spoilery bits because we implore you to see this movie.
Yeah, please do.
It's on Amazon. Blu-ray copies are available.
They're common.
They're pretty
you
common.
You won't pay too much for it. And it's worth it. It's a great addition to your collection.
And
physical media is important, folks.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Do not let it die.
And I'm glad that Erin got to see this for the first time on the show.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. The acting was phenomenal. I loved the lighting. The cinematography was gorgeous.
Let's check out some of Nicolas Winding-Refn's other films too.
Yeah,
Indeed.
We should. Yeah. So I enjoyed this movie. I know I say that a lot on this podcast. I know I say that a lot here.
Only when I'm not involved, except for today.
I don't know. There's been a couple movies shown that I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was joking about the first season.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you gave us a few clunkers in the first season.
Well, important clunkers though.
Yeah.
So
and one in the second season.
Remember, low blood sugar. But moving out of this, before we get into the next pick, I would like to reiterate that the GoFundMe link to the AWA fundraiser will be in the link to this description, along with the promotion, and we hope that you among our listeners can set a bit aside to help us keep our furry friends safe in this coming winter.
Yeah, they're a great place filled with great people.
And great pets.
Yeah, I got my last 2 cats from them. My grandmother's current cat is from them, and he's a very good boy.
Mm-hmm. And they have adorable dogs, cats, and little
Rabbits
furry
and
friends like
gerbils.
rabbits, gerbils, guinea pigs,
Chinchillas.
chinchillas. Which, if you've ever pet a chinchilla, it's like petting a cloud. Because their fur is just so dense and light and fluffy. It's like petting a cloud.
Oh, that's great.
I could see that in the smile there.
Yeah.
But speaking of Erin, who, let's be honest, is the one we owe so much to for this particular fundraiser.
Yeah.
Speaking of her, I do believe it is her turn on the rotation to round us out for 2022 potentially.
I believe you would be correct.
Well, depending on how our schedules work over the next few weeks.
Holidays do make that a fickle beast.
They do make it a fickle beast. However, the movie I picked is not a holiday movie, unless you're really confused as to what holidays are. My next film is a 2001 romantic drama jukebox musical. Directed by Baz Luhrmann.
That's right.
Oh.
So this is a love it or hate it movie. I will preface it by that.
Baz Luhrmann. Ugh.
So it's the only Baz.
on a ride, bitch.
It's the only Baz Luhrmann movie I really like,
Yeah.
and I understand that parts.
We haven't seen Elvis.
We haven't seen Elvis yet. My pick is 2001's Moulin Rouge.
And I am so glad we're dragging him for this.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.